From the Observer to the Observed by Marquez Price. To the Creator, for these words do not come from me, but through me. Allow me to stay aligned within your will. To my parents, words can't describe what you mean to me. That would be a book in itself. Thank you for everything. Dedication. To the Creator, for these words do not come from me, but through me. Allow me to stay aligned within your will. To my parents, words can't describe what you mean to me. That would be a book in itself. Thank you for everything. Barry Sanders by Marquez Price. I remember watching this guy run with the football, with my simultaneous introduction to quantum physics. He was as quick as teleportation, with a smorgasbord of elusive moves that lost tackles like yesterday, and sometimes he'd lose 10 yards before gaining 15 on the same play. He was unpredictable and exciting as anyone witnessed on a football field to me, and somehow the recollection of his gift carrying the ball and my thoughts at the chance of carrying your heart the same became an interpolation of the steps my imagination made into the manifestation of us. Infinite by Marquez Price. I once knew a brave man, willing to go his entire life to prove his staying power would outlast any neophyte in the regions of her psyche, because his certainty was seated in his memory of her from before. They say the sands under our feet equal the stars as far as our eyesight can reach at night. So, I navigated the doors of time and optimism between grains of people throughout galaxies to find you with the hands of infinity in my favor. Good Juju by Marquez Price. I remember to dispense kindness, patience, and understanding from a reservoir I keep when traveling through disparate worlds of idiosyncrasies inhabited by others, because the ancestors of West Africa taught me that treating others how you want to be treated is good juju in existence of one large organism of people. Bodies by Marquez Price. Snapshots of nostalgia. That boy had a firecracker cackle and cracked jokes that lit laughter like the 4th of July. We were his audience, the classroom his stage. On the court he could spin like D. Rose or Pearl Monroe, not left hand to his right direction or right hand to his left direction, but right to right and left to left. I mimicked his move into my repertoire. Twirls of a whirling dervish, a pivot patterned after his father's movement away from the impressionable stage of his life. It takes moxie to be magnanimous, but a kid can't reconcile sleep for dinner, and an absentee father fading further into the distance like an apparition. Fast forward. You hear old boy got out? Sometimes the cage facilitates the monster within, one exasperated by your words of rehabilitation. With several bullets, he desecrated her compassion, concern, and wings reserved for flight to where angels fly effortlessly. Precipitated by a salvo of accusations, the street scuttlebutt saying that his brother is still missing. The national news reported that the bodies he caught along the path of annihilation are still being found. A mother murdered by a son when she was given word that he might be a serial killer and confronted one. Arch Enemy by Marquez Price. Fear of abandonment and trust were opposite ends of a shoestring that I laced and tied together tightly on a shoe I wore to walk through relationships with others. But when that shoe wore out and I realized blame for external reasons equaled my lack of growth, Lex Luthor, the Joker, Green Goblin, and Megatron disappeared, and I saw that my arch enemy was me. Periodic Table by Marquez Price. Sometimes I feel small, like the point at which the pen is pushed through the map to show a mere spot on the globe. Billions of years ago, there was a star that shone splendid before my eyes could see it. Yet, my elevator of belonging rises when I understand that nearly all the elements in the human body were made from the same star. Oneness by Marquez Price. Human connection is so astonishing that loneliness can be alleviated by a stranger if you allow yourself to be open. An intuitive nod that gives another solace when danger lurks, a guffaw from a group of people rendered incapable of resisting something humorous, and simultaneous, initiated, fading moments that adorn the tapestry of people with power, refusing the pull of divisiveness as an indolent alternative. The Golden Rule by Marquez Price. The city buildings assist as a charcoal sketch of a dreary skyline. Workers pass by the unkempt maverick daily on a divergent path, sometimes downtrodden with his head down. He avoids eye contact with the melancholic melodies of Lady Day in each step of his saunter. But flip the page on the calendar, and he appears rabid, frothing at the mouth, cussing and hollering, pigeons clearing paths as he weaves in and out of the downtown labyrinth, streets and alleys. Adolescents point and laugh, but they wouldn't if they saw the boy rendition of this man in 1989, when the crack epidemic was at its pinnacle, and every Friday night, his father and card-playing cronies got high off their own supply and would compete wildly for first place. The prize was to take advantage of the boy in the bedroom until he ran away, his violators escaping with impunity, and his development arrested to what felt punitive with placement in group homes that housed rounds of fistfights, juvenile detention stints, and an addiction to shooting a horse that runs as hard as a Kentucky Derby through his veins when he releases it from the tip of a needle. Stories unknown, because sometimes when he feels good enough to try it a decent day, I witness a familiar scene where he stands bedraggled and still, with parched skin matching his traverse, beaten shoes. Another passerby impugned him with the condescending, "Get a job," instead of exchanging humanity and compassion when the man humbled himself enough to ask for change. Maybe not change in coins, but in the behavior of how we overlook each other's pain. Feng Shui by Marquez Price. Over 7 billion people on the planet, and throughout the course of my life, a sense of being blanketed by the population has always been present. But I realize that a daunting 7 billion can pale in comparison to the absence of one. When I saw that your toothbrush was gone and the basic principles of Feng Shui commenced at my place. If for a Day by Marquez Price. If for a day you could wear my skin, you would see how I'm part of the most marginalized and misunderstood group in the Western world. You would understand why I'm culturally conditioned to be stoic, strong, and somehow get labeled as angry because I don't feel like squeezing into your cultural appropriations, so that you can feel comfortable. I learned to make a mask out of my flat, facial affect long before COVID-19 deemed it necessary for survival. And being that you would know what it feels like to be expendable, you wouldn't ask me why blacks are killing blacks in Chicago if you were colonized. And tempered to hate yourself in an impoverished environment that obstructs your vision of hope and a future with the frayed psyche to kill your own kind. Any race of people pitted against itself in such a setting of iniquity have proven to kill each other the same. It isn't an excuse gambit. Don't be obtuse. You would see how it feels to be profiled unjustly, stopped, searched, and how fear flies high with the sound of that blue and red siren, seeding itself in your DNA long before you hear it. You would know the systematic racism is when your wings of ambition are bound to your sides and freedom starts to resemble something mythical. You wouldn't ask me why I run so fast, because you'd understand what it feels like to run twice as fast, but only to get half as far in America. You'd understand my indifference towards being invited to a gathering where I'm not the predominant, but the tag-along token. Sometimes I want to be around my own, naked of the costume you need to wear to feel comfortable in your own skin. You'd understand how being a contrarian at times is a system of my plight, and mechanism used to remind you not to get too common with me, because I know when you haven't taken the time to understand me. From a lazy position of privilege. You'd understand that when I say you talk white, when I display my intelligence, that I am not imitating whiteness, as intelligence is not an inherently white trait. Nor would you render my intelligence to the usage of colloquial euphemisms. Know what I mean? Because if you think of it, I'm a linguistic genius after being stripped of my dialect to master your English. You'd understand that 30 seconds of a curriculum in history and a month out of a year is not fair exchange for reparations. Because when you learn that the history of reparation payments for us equals 0, your eyes squint to a peruse. It reads at the bottom of the chart, United States of America, from 1865 to present, slavery and Jim Crow era, African American black descendants. But if for a day you could wear my skin, you know that during the creation process, our tissue was borrowed from our mother's body. And every time you touch your skin, you were not touching your mother, but you were touching your grandmother and the first mother. Life recycles, and we are our ancestors. The eyes of Lucy have watched how skin relegates humanity from Ethiopia for 3.2 billion years. Before black was a description for a people to be subjugated by, or something you thought you could be more of than me because you have a bigger collection of Jordans, you know that none of that is our origin. If for a day, you'd understand. Shaka Zulu by Marquez Price. Peace, King. The video of your last physical moments here transfixed and traumatized me. My seethe became an unbridled fury. The blood in my eyes couldn't see peace that normally lubricates my vision. The way they stalked and murdered you enlisted me to a war to defend against those cowards who trespassed your body. I wanted to summon Shaka Zulu in his retributive brutality. How have we forgotten his ways that improved warfare methods in times like this, so that we are no longer defenseless? Your middle name is my first name, and that namesake will be carried by me through the breath that will speak words to pancake hatred upon impact, like a hollow point from the chamber of my mind, endless rounds fired for your defended honor. You fought to the very end, a paragon of a warrior. Your instinct was not to surrender, but to survive. Through 2 rounds, you kept moving forward until the motion of your body gave out, collapsed, and an indelible horror pressed repeat in my head. That was the last video I'll ever watch of a black man being cut down. You should have never been put in that situation. And though painful to accept, I can't help but be proud of how you fought through the impossible odds. The collective spirit of our ancestors was channeled. They can't kill us all, and you will live on. Ahmaud Arbery. Samson by Marquez Price. I was irate for that kid, Andrew Johnson, like Samson surrounded by Delilah and the Philistines, forced to cut his dreadlocks before a wrestling match in New Jersey, robbed of his strength, head bowed, humiliated. I had sympathy for the ant when that kid plucked its antenna from its head for amusement on the playground. Miss So-and-so had just taught us that those elbowed feelers were for the ant to smell, touch, taste, touch, and communicate with other ants. Essential, like our hair is essential to us. Andrew Johnson, as carbonated beings, ether. Gathered information in our hair connects us to our environment of nature. Like the ant, afros look like trees, locks like branches and vines. Our hair is alive and helped us escape. Cornrows served as maps on scalps, long before style, sacred geometric patterns for others to free ourselves from captivity. The only people on the planet with hair that grows vertically. Andrew Johnson, and defies gravity like a plant. Shaved his antenna that absorbs the most vitamin D from the sun, stores information, and is an extension of our nervous system. Andrew Johnson, they cut your hair. I grew mine out even more. To be the so-and-so to spread the lesson of our hair. Surrender by Marquez Price. I once had a woman tell me that she would go to war for me, and at that moment, impregnable walls to a fortress fell. I sheathed every weapon used before in innumerable battles because I realized I no longer needed to wage war within myself, for she had conquered my hesitation with an undying ambition of love. Sesame Street by Marquez Price. The most dangerous neighborhood to visit makes Skid Row look like Sesame Street, where doubt is the size of a big bird, telling you over and over, like Count Von Count, that you can't advance from the poverty of your thoughts. It'll make you Grover Blue if you listen. The chatter prattles on like Bert and Ernie, chomps down on the piece of the neighborhood with the ferocity of the Cookie Monster. I slowed to a snuffleupagus pace when I stayed too long and became Oscar the Grouch to my surroundings. I had to redefine the color of Elmo to stop and leap out with the hops of Kermit the Frog, for the two-headed monster is my ears, and the neighborhood not to reside in is the one between them. Ashe by Marquez Price. I honor my ancestors by prevailing in the face of adversity. In order to break free from the shackles of depression, I called upon them. Cottage Cheese and Nectarine by Marquez Price. My dad has taken to a bowl of cottage cheese with diced nectarine for years, an invariable routine. It's an inimitable trait within his example commitment to something imperative, that nourishes his well-being, and in that, I understand that the woman I choose to commit to must do the same for me and vice versa, like cottage cheese and nectarine. Sirens by Marquez Price. She was tall, like a mopane tree in southern Africa, lissom in her sequences of movement, paired with fervor through inordinate hours in the studio. A dancer, Wu-Tang, she could recite bars line for line. From the Klan, hip-hop became our daily symposium in the hallways of high school and remained the conduit throughout the years for us to exchange. Beats, rhymes, albums, the discography of our friendship. But I've never heard a more seizing lyric than when I was told that the father of your son employed the skullduggery to convince you to let your son go over to the neighbor's house so you could talk to him. A discussion you didn't anticipate would involve bullets and sirens, alerting your 5-year-old son that he was now a motherless child with the father on his way to prison for taking your life. Words Learned from Dealing with Bullies by Marquez Price. The triple-digit day served as a signal because the unbearable heat somehow made him deranged. And when the bottom of that bottle was upside down facing the ceiling fan, it meant that he had alcohol in his system, from his heels to the top of his warped brain matter. The baby was asleep when her mother told her father that she couldn't do it anymore. His drunken fit turned kinetic energy, rushing towards and pinning her up against the refrigerator. But she was tired of it, him, and undaunted, looked him straight in his eyes and said, "Hit me. I am untouchable." His hands fell to his sides. Words learned from dealing with bullies. He woke up the next morning on the sofa, his girlfriend and daughter free. Evolutionary 2016. 2016, the lowest time of my life. Survived the tail end of 15 broke, unemployed, with a clunky car that broke down again. Walk home to find an eviction notice on my door, and that cunning pack rat in my apartment I couldn't catch. The beginning scene of 2016 looked like the ending of that superhero movie, where the villain snapped his fingers at the end and all the good guys started disappearing. My friend's young corpse, snug in a casket, another headed to the penitentiary for a long stretch, sucked back in by that vacuum of recidivism. If I wrote down everything that happened, that I'll never scribe or tell, you'd understand that that year was a 5-year plan, in preparation to survive a future pandemic that the common person never saw coming. A rope of depression tied to my ankles, connected to the fin of a whale, plunging downward through the ocean of despair. Try to explain to the people you love why it appears as if you're moving like a turtle when they ask if everything is okay, because your smile is as weak as branch water when they study your facial features, and the answer true to their questioning would shatter the disguise you've manufactured to hide and survive. It's amazing how we sabotage ourselves so not to amplify the worry of others. Imagine going to sleep on a mattress that felt like quicksand in the morning when you tried to peel yourself off it. In the eyes of a perfect storm, unconditional meets unrequited in every facet of your life. No matter how strong the determination, Sisyphus and that boulder, the moment you realize doing everything right doesn't equate to life being fair. 2016. It took me back to that time when me and my high school girlfriend argued about that very thing about life being fair or not. How I couldn't admit that she was right, and that sometimes it isn't. And a couple years later, Irony would display its sense of humor in college. When I tried to understand why she was telling me she was a lesbian after 4 years, my wince wasn't at the orientation she revealed that I supported over what I wanted. My wince was at what I saw in the rearview mirror and questioning if the road we traveled together was real. Last words of I wanted to marry you, and I wanted you to be the mother of my kids. My graduation plans revealed that dropped tears from her eyes the size of avocados. And it stayed with me, as women in the future felt like a game of charades. When I looked at them, until I was imitating faces and motions, to be recognized by someone special who had lost trust in me. My lack of trust, that wouldn't allow me to put my guard down, attracted the like. For the behavior I used in the game of tag to outmaneuver, put me on the other side of what I swore would never catch me. For losing trust from someone else is like knowing you were gold, but now they see you as silver, and you get buried in doubt, because even gold must be unearthed again by other hands to shine undeniably, from a forgotten cemetery where it loses its luster. 2016. It took me back to that teenager who loved basketball more than anything, but his gifts on the court were too big for a city with an antiquated mentality. Because I was the city's best kept secret on the West Coast, with the former All-American father, attending his alma mater looking to repeat history of state championship glory. It was where I learned how sickening jealousy can be. Cassius and Brutus conspired in all forms. Friends, even my best friend. Teammates, some of my own coaches, parents of teammates, and other players when I tried to transfer schools. It's why I never listened to people saying I'd be a great coach down the line, due to fear of accidentally, potentially, disrupting the kid's dream. But they never broke my love for that game, nor the love between a father and a son. He rose like the phoenix, and I tunneled my way through Shawshank to reach Zihuatanejo. 2016. Thank God I was born with a blend of fierce competitiveness, indomitable will, and my mother's voice to encourage as an emollient when adversity started to peel my skin, because it got me back up towards the end of 2016. But it was propelled by anger until I was stark raving mad. A conflagration, ready to set everything ablaze in my path, and I started to, steamrolling towards retribution. To engage a world my audacious pride swelled up to challenge, until I pulled out one of my favorite books and reread it, The Tale of a Man, marooned in the dank conditions of solitary confinement, stripped of everything for years, until enmity and fate became the odd couple that freed him to riches beyond his wildest imagination. But as loathing hung over the wounds he still harbored after arriving at his freedom, because, like his mind that was never incarcerated while his body was caged, that same mind was still in bondage, since he didn't release his resentment after his body escaped bondage. And in that, Edmond Dantes reminded me that I was vehemently denying the sum of some of my own decisions of recent years as depressing his anger turned inward. And the timing became impeccable to try again, repeatedly, until I saw a massive change within myself. As a wise man changes and a fool changes not, what others did to you in the past that had more to do with them than you, and what you did to yourself in response in the future, does not determine how you can wield your own power to be what you want now. I worked diligently to rewire my mind for lasting results, and I did evolve. Roots by Marquez Price. Say thank you to the bad. In good experiences, gratitude becomes the shield that allows you to be impervious to the clash of the outcome. For complaints are cousins to the carping that only make you perishable when connected to the root of your chosen mindset. Mr. October by Marquez Price. I became a Yankee fan from an old man. Jersey with number 44 he wore. Sitting on his porch, listening to games on the radio, walking by on my way to school, he'd look up from his radio and say, "Keep swinging." Then years later, it made sense. Keep swinging. Through the failed attempts, your resilience is the unconquerable enemy used to swing when life pitches hardships. Keep swinging. Sometimes you'll swing and miss. Keep swinging. I connected the number 44 he wore to the player it represented, who finished with more strikeouts than hits, but hit more home runs when it counted. Keep swinging. Whatever obstacle or setback he faced, he bounced back. Keep swinging. They own the pitchers and how they walk up to the plate. And therefore, the key to the hitter lies in the boldness, like Reggie Jackson. Long before I'd be born in October, and he'd be given the nickname of the 10th month, keep swinging. That old man was putting a battery of confidence in my back. I've worn a Yankee cap ever since. Rosetta Stone by Marquez Price. Sometimes I act like I can't hear you, and you repeat yourself. My subterfuge surmounts your innocence once again. I tease my sisters incessantly as a boy, and with you, I get to be the child at play again. I just wanted you to hear your thick accent try to squeeze and get stuck through the gates of phonetics. You wag your finger at me, and we laugh. Habla mi idioma, and that's exactly what I'll do to get closer to you. The Ant and the Octopus by Marquez Price. Brother man, if you want to survive as a unit, study the ant. His community is his colony. Their communication with each other is adroit, with an ability to solve complicated problems. These parallels have long been a revelation of study with many human societies. They've studied you, and you haven't studied yourself. Brother man, if you want to survive alone, study the octopus. Learn to squeeze through the compact gaps of your habitat with a complex nervous system. In superb sight to see what is seen and unseen, intelligent, and behaviorally diverse. Because it'll feel like you need 8 limbs to swim. Strategize to defend yourself against predators, camouflage, displays of threats, and be venomous if you must. For you have been seen as a sea monster since mythology. Brother man, survive. Tribe by Marquez Price. The quieter I am, the more I can hear. Mahalia Jackson greeted you at the door of my grandmother's house back then. My father asked her when he was the age I am now, what it was like when she was his age. Every day was like Sunday, she said, and that's when dinner was served for all the family. My grandfather swung his arms when he walked, and miles his feet took him during the odyssey of his life became the stories my father would recite, validating that his old man was everything to him and a man I wished I had met. I went from being the observer to being the observed, overnight. Asking for greatness doesn't always meet the unanticipated warp speed at which it arrives, and I am grateful, because they say a man can't be a prophet in his own town, but I reminisce when my maternal grandfather took me and my twin cousins with my uncle to fishing trips, where I caught my first fish and put it back in the lake, because I somehow knew that I had caught something that didn't belong to me, and that allowing others to do the same is the utmost courtesy. It was those times that would expand like the ripples beneath the boat and now resurface at the dock of today to assure me that all I need to do is close my eyes, be humble, and listen. to the tribe that prepared me for this day since I was born. First Meeting by Marquez Price. She said she had the fuel of 1,000,000 cynical women running through her veins, but that her daughter will grow up kind, curious, and happy. And if she decides that she wants to know her dad, she will, and can ask the questions herself, because within the foresight of her protective nature, she won't taint the image of the father that her daughter never knew. Bondage by Marquez Price. We bullhorn our freedoms at every preconceived notion of an entity encroaching. But the soreness of our necks, from heads that genuflect to technological servitude, say otherwise. A bondage bequeathed to our children yearning for our attention, and learning to imitate our intimacy, bereft interactions with each other. Addition by Marquez Price. Anonymous 1 was mercurial. He changed with every fad of prepubescence. Dickie suit and a Raiders hat for gangster rap when the West Coast was the dress code. The next week, on the periphery of skater association, when fat laces took flight with airborne twisting boards for wheels to land on scuffed concrete, leaving Sharpie-looking marks on sidewalks. It matched the unpredictability of his home life, where the stoicism of his mother bewildered his attempt to bond. And his father amused himself by driving up humongous hills, only to cover his eyes and face with his hands at the apex of those hills, forcing Anonymous 1 to grab the steering wheel as the car zigzagged towards awaiting peril. The conditions that came to puppeteer his aloof nature, making him appear to be suspended in oddness, unable to be pulled by the strings of failed engagement by his peers. But somehow, we linked through levity. A mutual affinity for episodes of Martin brought us back together throughout the years and revisited laughter. Anonymous 2 was as loyal as they come. I met him in the bathroom one day in high school when some upperclassman tried to jump him. Bro, I'll kill for you if anyone ever tries to fuck with you from this day forward. I thought his statement was hyperbolic, but the kid I joined to rescue from an uneven ratio of a sneak ambush engraved his words in a bond. And when I'd see him on Mondays in class, I'd ask why he looked so tired, until one day he rolled up his sleeve and showed me tracks where his father would puncture holes with needles for heroin to course through his veins and gooey his inhibitions on weekends across the border when he needed his son to be a soldier in a drug war. Anonymous 2 made bodies drop from rapid AK-47 gunfire, hanging out the window of a car driven by his father with the right hand on the steering wheel and left hand spraying terror at enemies brave enough to see if they had a maker to meet. Anonymous 2 found a way to escape the weekends when he met his girlfriend. She was the only thing that made sense to him. He stuck to her like a sole on a shoe for grounding when his past evoked thoughts of potential tempestuous streaks. For years until he got caught up on some drug offenses and was sentenced to 5 years. I ran into Anonymous 1 at a party in college. He had dropped out of high school, but had been working on a steady job since. Told me he met his girl who ditched her boyfriend when he got sent up to serve time. His name was Anonymous 2. That sucker keeps calling collect and threatening me, but I told his ass we can get busy when he gets out. I tried to caution Anonymous 1 about Anonymous 2, but his hubris put an S on his chest. He didn't realize that this was no comic book. All seasons of Martin were finished, and this wasn't funny. A year later, to the date that I saw Anonymous 1, I heard Anonymous 2 was shot and killed at the border in a failed escape from the country, 48 hours after he was released from prison. 2 bodies were found in the back of a building with bullets in both heads. Anonymous 1 and his girlfriend. It didn't take mathematics to figure out 1 + 2 = anonymous. Gingerbread Man by Marquez Price. You kept trying to get me to rap like you, but your command of speaking cadence was innate. You showed me how to dunk as a diminutive hooper. We hurdled hurdles on the grass doing plyometrics. Sometimes I visit that gym, haven't played there in so long, because that metal bench is still there, the one I was lacing up my shoes on and waiting for you to pull up at the Saturday morning run. When I was met by news instead that you were in the bathtub with a shotgun on your lap, she had left you, and you had committed suicide. I think at 14 years old was the first time that the idea of commitment to someone else scared me, because I thought people stayed together forever, like the movies. I created the ability to not show my feelings too much and run, like the gingerbread man, because people who love hard have the tendency to lose sense of self when met with the unrequited. It took me years to let the gingerbread man go, because it's safe when you love yourself and the person you love loves themselves. Circus by Marquez Price. Social media is a circus. Clowns, crowds, and outlandish exhibitions. You're either a consumer purchasing a ticket or a buyer investing in the hoopla. The ghost of P.T. Barnum still knows a gullible audience makes a profit. I found out a way to monetize the circus because my attendance there reminded me that attention and time are currencies you should not waste on social media. Change by Marquez Price. They say the 5 closest people to you are who you are, and to determine the priorities of those 5 people as quickly as you can. If it's gluttony, we will help each other to the buffet of health issues. Amazing how we kill animals and eat dead flesh when it eventually kills us for eating it. If it's gossip, we will speak of others and not to each other. A perfect way to stifle undivided understanding. If it's laziness, we will slow time down and waste our lives together. If it's hatred, we will calcify as rock and adamant to the limbs of life that allow us to move away from the frequency of fear. But if it's self-accountability, we will form a fist from 5 fingers, able to swing and knock over the barriers that stymie our ability to change ourselves and the world. Genie by Marquez Price. Spoke to a genie. She said she'd grant me 3 wishes. Told her I'd like 3 things to prepare me for fatherhood. A niece, and a nephew soon followed. Spider-Woman by Marquez Price. I saw a woman with these eyes, and when they contacted mine, an epiphany came to light, and I realized for the first time what the paralysis of the fly is like when it's stuck on the web of its captor. Shooting Dice by Marquez Price. I think we like to shoot dice, but not because it excites. We're cupping, shaking, talking shit, mustering up courage, and throwing. The probability to a win in this gambling shack we know is life. That we know can blow our conditions as black men in any erratic direction. By the time those same dice hit the concrete, to reveal numbers that determine our wins and losses. 100. by Marquez Price. An old soldier, country boy from Mississippi, cantankerous long before his later decades. It was his makeup, coffee straight, black as asphalt, every morning for breakfast. He chewed tobacco and slept with that German Mauser under his pillow to the day that he died. Sometimes, I thought his mean nature was the fuel that pushed his lifespan so long. But he had a smile that was disarming. Oh, me, he'd say when he'd laugh. It was infectious. And he was there. When you were a grandchild with chicken pox or in need of a place to stay. When being grown was a premature advance in the real world. I saw generational wealth clear when he openly talked about inheritance and emphasized the wishes of his house to never be sold. He never worried about anything, and his willpower was as strong as anyone. But his last offering of wisdom to me was that we are not in control. He wanted to reach 100 and left at 99 years and 10 months, 2 months from his birthday. PIMP by Marquez Price. A child has no guile, and numbers don't lie. But any man or woman who manipulate with a carrot and stick shtick of an exchange between your offering in the form of a belief and money is equivalent to a preacher infiltrating minds persuasively. Sisters by Marquez Price. I got sisters who changed my diapers. Sisters I shared rooms with. Sisters obsessed with Prince and Maxwell, posters all over the walls, and songs on repeat for hours. Sisters who looked after me, like additional mothers. They helped raise me. Sisters who used to wear the thickest of Coke bottle glasses. Sisters who used to practice the running man in the living room for hours. Sisters who put me on their lap while driving a booger green Datsun. Sisters who dropped me off at the movies to meet with girls. Sisters who let me drive their Nissan when I got my license. I went speeding around the corner one day until it spun out of control. 4 furious times before it shut off, I gathered myself and never told. Sisters I would squirt with water guns and stick my finger under their nose while they tried to take a nap. Sisters with patience, I tease and terrorize. They answer the call every time I needed help. Sisters I fought with in the morning, commiserated with by the afternoon. Sisters I traveled coast to coast with, Cali to Chocolate City. Sisters I went to church with, Sunday dinners and family reunions. Sisters I probably laughed the hardest with than anyone else when we get going on something funny. Shared memories, stories that are inextricably woven into the fabric of my consciousness. Sisters who are different than me, but the same. Sisters, no matter what, I'd find a way to reconcile with. An unspoken vow I made long ago to my parents. I'd surrender before I'd allow them to see us hampered by our petty differences. They raised us to be better than that. Sisters I'm grateful to and would give the world to because they mean the world to me, my 2 sisters. No Susception by Marquez Price. It signals us to react when we need to, recoil from scalding water, and step away from broken glass. But we don't love people that love us, and love people that don't love us. And in between that lies pain we fail to perceive. Gravity by Marquez Price. I heard a 150-pound man would weigh only 25 pounds on the moon, and astronauts must exercise several hours a day in space to prevent their muscles from atrophying. And I discern the greater the size of my ego, from the distance of my humility will determine the gravity of my gratitude. The Placebo Effect by Marquez Price. Stoke a child's imagination and place compliments in front of them like stepping stones in a way that will allow them to climb towards the heights of their dreams, because the world will sometimes tell them the opposite, and they will believe it the same. Because the secret is that an adult without dreams and imagination are children growing up with depressed dreams and imagination. Hieroglyphics by Marquez Price. I couldn't read her for a long time, but when I finally got the message, the deciphering of her became a much fuller understanding of myself. We can build empires that rival the ancient world and rule through dynasties for thousands of years, as the king is only as strong as the queen beside him. Terrorism, America by Marquez Price. Can you imagine mob killings of a people mostly by hanging? Lynchings grotesque enough to make you vomit, intended to terrorize and intimidate a population to maintain a supremacy. An authority so indifferent that their shared hatred of the assailants never obstructed these lynch mobs or punished their leaders. You could see the government's tacit support to the barbaric practice. 3,500 lynched between the Civil War in 1960. Victims routinely young black men suspected of contact with a white woman. Do you see why our mothers cringe if we ever covet you? It's a trauma seated in her womb, not because she doesn't like you, before getting to know you. Bodies of victims burned, bodies of victims dismembered, castrated, bodies shown to the public. I remember the graphic photos of the practice when I was a child. People shown smiling next to the charred remains of their victim. It terrorized me. It was no holiday when Billy sang Strange Fruit. Lynching, a homegrown American form of terrorism. Monsoons by Marquez Price. She said she could feel the sadness in her bones when thunder struck and lightning flashed. Rain thumping against the windows untamed, wind became microbursts that would slap over lofty trees seeded from hope of happiness, evoke the flood of emotions, and when she was lonely, alienated by the social circumstances that mucked memories of the past that made her a maverick. But he too is a loner. So he lies next to her and offers his chest as a pillow for her to lay her head on to ease her angst and the solidarity with him when the monsoons visit every summer. Royal Greetings by Marquez Price. What up, King? I can't call it. I'm getting money. What you on? Thriving. Yo, why you always call me King? Because you always talking about getting money. But you don't even know the king of wealth for all times is Mansa Musa, a black man like yourself. Study your history, King. Libra by Marquez Price. Simple sentences. I'll overanalyze, and what seems to be a vacillation between extremes, the only sign that can discern naturally what someone means and what they meant when they said what they said, by how they said it. Read in between lines and situations instinctively for immense clarity on both sides of the spectrum. It helps me get a greater understanding of people, weighing the scales to determine if I want to allow you in my orbit or enter yours. Vampires by Marquez Price. Black don't crack. Or maybe it's in the genetics, the melanin, the 2 teaspoons of sea moss at sunrise, and hot yoga, that exfoliates bark complexion, rejuvenated. Vitamin D from sun salutations, we need more than others. Fasting for several days, the autophagy, to regenerate. Ingesting ginger, lemon, and turmeric juice with cayenne pepper, the deep breathing. The negative connotation of the color is offset by the power of the properties to preserve. Maybe the answer is that we are vampires. We bit the neck of the world, and everyone wants to look forever young. Telos of an Acorn by Marquez Price. In the cells of a small acorn is already an oak tree. And where we enter this world as infants, the telos of an infant has every form of us along the way of our lifetime journey, along with our death embedded in our cells. Each grain of sand drops through the hourglass of time, moving us towards that destination. Consequently, we're already dead in several ways. Therefore, what is there to be afraid of in living? Eternally, the telos of an acorn. 1,000,001 by Marquez Price. He was in what he thought was a dilemma. There was a woman in his life. She peeled back layers, opened his eye, the third one, from the pineal gland. He said he had never had such a supply of strength and power to tap into, but he was growing selfish. So many women he could weave the physical and spiritual with. Tantric. Baba told him he could have access to 1,000,000 women with what she had helped him discover. Or he could access 1,000,000 women in her if he chooses her as his true discovery because she chose you the same. Sacred choices because maybe a woman is God. Letter to Tomorrow by Marquez Price. Tomorrow. Know that hope isn't a fantasy. It's a vital nutrient. The collective breath we breathe to break fast when our eyes open and we arise from the domain where the obstinately optimistic dare to dream chimeric and live egalitarian. Long away from the dystopia, some have vowed to continue as the ruination of the entire species. There are footprints on the moon. Hence, the sky is not the limit, the mind is. Draw on its well, and you'll find that doing anything you want isn't a cliche. It's a matter of you versus you. What's in the heart will come out of the mouth, in love and fury. And a hurt heart won't hear love no matter how loudly it is professed. Control your tongue and shun the tongue when it tries to say negative things about yourself. The subconscious is unable to differentiate between the polarity of what it is told. For that reason, make your subconscious your genie by telling it your wishes, and positive manifestations will be a reality. Weaponize your ideas. They'll live on long after any gun, sword, or bomb your hands once brandished. Anyone can kill. It takes the same hand to exercise greater restraint when handling the pain of others personified. Our pain is the killer's killer. There's no enlightenment needed to know that we have been wiping ourselves out. As a result, caution yourself in rushing in to fight for those who do expire prematurely, while the orchestrator grows old to tell the tales of war. A man's love is life, and a woman's life is love. Balance both feminine and masculine, because life is short and love is everlasting. Every person you encounter is your teacher. The ones who hold your anger, bitterness, and resentment are your masters. The lessons are your yogic practices. Every inhale and exhale are backs bowed to offer reverence to moments gifted. Only grow apart from those who don't grow, and caution yourself from eschewing those sent to help you grow. Be comfortable with having enemies, for there is a thin line between enemy and friend. Anyone who has all friends and no enemies is an enemy to themselves. Learn different languages. It will allow you to leap the borders that the hateful have constructed. Delude yourself not with money. It's the liquid tool for living that you can't take with you. They'll siphon it from your sarcophagus. Therefore, leave the land for your next generation. It's the only thing Mother Earth isn't producing any more of. The highest value resides in places we call property to house our homes. Don't follow anyone. Allow the answers from within lead you. Never look down on the homeless. That cardboard they sleep on could be your bed tomorrow, as the circumstances of life are whimsical. And understand that one man had everything and nothing, while another man had nothing and everything. If you choose to see yourself as energy immersed within the universe, then the universal Most High will present itself, and you will no longer pray to an old, bearded man in the sky. And if you choose neither, your energy will remain indestructible. Respect all beliefs of others, but don't allow theirs to cast you down to anything fear-based when you don't subscribe to them. Because tomorrow, I'll tell you of a story that my father told me, of a man who would walk around with a bird in his hand, asking strangers if the bird in his hand was dead or alive. And if someone said the bird was alive, he'd crush it and reveal a dead bird. And if someone said the bird was dead, he'd open his hand and set it free. That man will approach you one day, and as your father, I'll make sure that you know that the bird is in that man's hands. And so will be your decisions in life when you arrive, my unborn children.